Hello, this is William Naden. I'm with Cooley Guitars, and we're here today interviewing Jo Corso. Joe, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Of course. So, I guess we can start out, and I'll have you give us a little backstory about Joe and his journey to musicianhood.
It started when I was a kid. Guitar Hero. I was
Guitar.
obsessed with Guitar Hero. Like, we went to my cousin's house and they had like System of a Down playing, and like I had no idea what it was, but I just saw these like notes coming down. My ADHD's just like that looks great. And then like just like any other fifth grader, I was just like that's all I did. Like when I got home, it was just like okay, but like I that's when I started like that became like the soundtrack, like that game, just the music, like Paramore, Nirvana, Van Halen, all these like artists were just like I had just as much fun listening to music as I was pretending to play the actual songs. And then when I got my first guitar, it was just like that's where it all started. Like I wanted to learn how to play Everlong, and then Hopper Teacher, and then that's kind of where it starts. And then
Okay, so what age were you when you made that transition from Guitar Hero to real Guitar Hero?
I was about 11. I got a Mexican-made Fender Stratocaster for like Christmas of like 2010. I can't remember, but like that was like a lot of fun because it was an instant attraction to it. It was just kind of like it just there was a familiarity with it that was just like obviously it's so much more different, but like there's something about like this act of playing. Like I don't know, there was something. And then after a year, I didn't touch Guitar Hero. I was just like okay, I'm gonna start. It was all self-taught until I actually started talking with like people who knew what they were doing, and they'd be like, "Oh no, you should play it like this. This is how you hold the pick." So I didn't even know how to hold the strap right. Like it was just it was a lot of like baby steps.
So you have a very unique playing style, and I'm sure did Guitar Hero contribute to that at all?
So when it comes to like the percussive stuff, I mean like that was more. I had a music teacher in middle school. Her name was Mrs. Cook, and over her time she collected like dozens and dozens of like beat up classical nylon string, like some steel string guitars, and in her classroom she just had like 30 of these guitars. And then she every Friday afternoon she had this thing called Guitar Club, and she was obsessed with like the Beatles, John Cougar Mellencamp, like all these like John Denver, like all these guys. And then out of nowhere, this is like 2010, right? So YouTube starts coming a thing like viral videos, and then you get all these like players coming out. And then that's when right around the time where like Andy McKee uh, re-released a video of him playing drifting, and for some reason I don't know what it was, but she was just like, I'm gonna show you this video because it's just so cool. And then I just remember just looking at it, and like it was like a religious experience. It was just like that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. But like it was the first time where I was just like, this is like music that goes beyond like it's the first instrumental song where I was just like, oh, you don't need words to kind of like tell a story. It's like it's all there.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's wild. So tell me more about your influences, I guess, in your musical journey as you were taking lessons and attending guitar classes. Who did you find yourself listening to most in that period?
Well, I'm from Syracuse, New York, and over there is my guitar teacher was Peter Levine. Uh, it's weird talking about him because it's just like it was beyond like I've had a lot of teachers, and I think there's like definitely moments or even the instrument. Like I never could learn the piano. Like learning the actual sheet music for my brain was just like I couldn't do it. And there was no instructor, no matter like what kind of process they did. It was just like difficult. But like Peter was this guy he was a philosophy major. So like his ability to kind of relate music with like mental health and kind of I don't know. It was just like to him playing guitar wasn't just a music thing. It was like it was a way of life. It was a way of understanding yourself and your surrounding. And like we learned like music through like jazz music. So like we had the real book, and so we would go through like John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Thelonious Monk, and then we would just kind of like he would give me like homework assignments like go home, listen to this version, and then listen to this version, and then we would go through these songs and essentially dissect them. Like this is why this works. This is why it feels like this when you do this. And then it just was like I don't know, just beyond being able to read what's on paper, it was just more like, oh, this is like a language. Like this is like This is something that like and it evolves over time. Like it was just like my older brother was obsessed with linguistics, and then I was just like, I guess me too in a way. I don't want to compare myself in that way, but like I do see the similarities between that.
So how was that growing up in New York? Did you find like a lot? Were you able to go to a lot of shows? I mean, there's so much culture in New York. I feel like there's a lot going on.
Syracuse. I mean, I grew up like an hour outside of Manhattan for like the first 10 years of my life, and I mean, like I wasn't listening to much music, but my dad like would occasionally like we would go into the city because like I love trains and stuff like that. I had like weird fixations and weird like interests and stuff like that, but like we would go into the city for a day and like like growing up in a like Irish Italian family, like everyone talks about like Bon Jovi or people talk about Billy Joel and stuff like that, but like I moved when I was 10, so like I don't call myself like a New Yorker, but Syracuse was like, I don't know, like it's a Rust Belt city, like the best parts of that city are no longer there. But what's left is you get a very interesting kind of like approach to music. There's a lot of like jam bands. There's a lot of like hip hop artists. You get a lot of people who are like in cover bands. So there's there's definitely like a respect. It's not like nobody's playing music, but like it's weird. Like I mean, like with jam band music, it was just like you go to these venues and you get these guys who are playing these solos and like drive you crazy. But then it would be like two feet of snow outside. It was like a blizzard. So it was just like it was like an outlet. It was like a space where people are like, oh, this is where we find our happiness.
So like growing up, you seem to have good influences and good teachers in your life, and it sounds like you were also surrounded by other musicians. Yeah.
You're talking about in high school?
Like yeah.
Not as many. I mean, when you talk about like rock and roll guys, you're talking about people with like guitars and drums and stuff like that.
Sure.
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, but like. There was a band that I was obsessed with called the New Days, and they were like a couple grades older than me, but like they were kind of like that Zeppelin, Grateful Dead kind of influence group of guys, and it was like that was like my first local show I ever saw, and like it left like the biggest imprint on me. It was just like they played this like basement of like a waffle, like a waffle shop, and it was just like that was great. But like in high school, like I played in the band, I sang in choirs and stuff like that. So like you were around music kids all the time.
So you were very musically active for most all your life then. Yeah.
It was just like there's a lot of things I'm terrible at. There's a few things I'm okay at, but there's one thing I know like I'm confident, like I'm really good at, or at least I'm willing to kind of see where it takes me if I put all the time and effort and energy to see where it builds. It's just like until the day where it stops, until like I can't do anything new with it. That's when I'll stop. But like I've still been doing it for quite a bit of time.
So you mentioned doing new things and exploring and staying creative, I guess. So you're here in Nashville now. How long have you been here in Nashville?
Been here since 2016.
Wow. Okay. So you've been here a while, and so are you going to school currently here in Nashville?
No, I went to Belmont. That's the main reason why I came down here was school, and the original plan was like 2020. Like I was gonna like go back to New York, or at least like try to start something. Like I had no idea. I really had no plan. It was just kind of more of like a fantasy, just to kind of like live in that space. But it just made, and then COVID hits, and then economically it was just like like I know people here, it would be a lot safer for me to kind of stick around and then maybe go up. But like for the past couple of years, it's just kind of been like, no, I've kind of like established myself here, and I think that like there's a certain part of like you spend so much time in one place, you kind of like there's still stuff to be heard. There's still venues. There's still musicians. I'm still amazed by like the people I still meet at these like venues and stuff like that. I don't think that's going anywhere.
Okay. So at some point down the road, though, you do want to return to New York and explore that more.
I'd love to live in a city.
Yeah.
I mean, like a Chicago or New York or even like Austin. Like I mean, just like as of right now, it makes more sense for me to be where I'm at. I mean, like grass is always greener in another spot, right? Like I have like obviously fantasies of like living in these like cities and like I don't know. I've always felt more connected to spaces where I can like wake up, like walk around a city that I don't have to like drive my car everywhere. like
Right.
I like change. I like moving around. I don't like being in one place for too long. So at least just for like an experiment, at least just see what happens.
Okay.
You know.
So I feel like it's something that always comes up is like the daily struggle in the life of musicians, and I was just wondering how that's been going for you. So, of course, you're trying to work on making music and pursuing that. And then, of course, what do you do in terms of a day job?
I work for Gibson. I work for Gibson Guitars. I work in their final assembly, which is I'm putting on the strings, setting up the guitars, and making sure they just sound good when they get out of the box. But like to your point earlier, you're talking about like the day of the life of a musician. You know, it don't matter if you're in Nashville or you're in Austin or New York. I mean, like I was just having a conversation with some person who works at Berry Hill, and talking about like there's no more middle class for musicians. Like to be able to kind of somewhat get by with just performing is no longer a thing. Just the climate, the economic, everybody has a day job. I haven't met one musician playing these venues or playing any of these spaces where, you know, no one's not like, you know, busting their ass at like some restaurant or like serving tables. Like I've done that too. I think everybody should 3 years of their life should be dedicated working in the food service industry. But like at that point, it becomes a matter of attitude. It becomes a matter of like, well, if I work 10-hour shift and like I know there's an open mic, I know there's a microphone, I know there's a stage, am I going to be able just to kind of like, you know, take a deep breath after a hard shift and then be like, hey, I got to try this, I got to at least go for it, you know, because I know, and every time I do it I'm like I always walk away a lot more happy. So it's just like it makes more sense just to kind of just like, you know, just like kind of try to like do the best you can in your day job, but also do the best you can afterwards. It's just like, you know,
Well, that's pretty cool that you're able to work in something music related.
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah, in the meantime, has that affected your music? Have you met cool people while working at Gibson?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, coworkers, like every coworker I have is just they're all musicians. I mean, all of them, all touring musicians. They're all like all different kinds of music too. I mean, like I have like a coworker who listens to the hardcore music. I got a guy who listens to dad metal, you know. But like, I think the one thing that's especially beneficial is that 4 hours a day, guaranteed 4 hours a day, I have my hands on the guitar. I'm doing finger warm-ups. I'm testing to see how this thing plays. So like, my fingers are constantly moving. Like it's one of those things where it's like muscle memory. It's the thing I do outside of work. It's the thing I do at work. So it almost just becomes like, it's not like I no longer need to practice, but like
there's always the guitar.
Yeah, there's like my hands. I'm always warmed up. It's just like I'm always like prepared. You know.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
All right. So would you say it's like would you say that there's like times where you find you don't have enough energy, like, you know, to devote yourself to the music, or like why you're here in Nashville, would you say that's the hardest part about trying to make it in music or pursue that, or like is it something else? Like what do you think?
I mean, that's a great question. I think it is different for everybody, and it's different for what your version of success is. I mean, it depends on like what you see as the end goal. Like, obviously, people who pursue this, they want to be successful and they want to like at least. It's funny. The anxieties I have 2 years ago performing music are so much more different from what they are now, because you know it's. The further you kind of go down a path, the more you kind of explore, the more you kind of like figure out like, oh, there's more to this than just kind of like getting attention or people just giving you compliments. I do think for me personally, it does go in cycles where it's just like, you know, every 2 months I'll write new material. I'll write something I'm really proud of and something that I feel like is really different. But then, that rush goes by and then you're like, what's next? Like, what can I do that's bigger than that? What can I do that's better than that? And when you get in that competitive mindset, like, it's a toxic mindset to be in. Because just, I don't know, getting up on stage, singing anything, just doing anything, just trying to make somebody's day better or brighten somebody's day. I mean, like, at the end of the day, that's the best part about it. But definitely, like, your own anxieties and my depression will prevent me sometimes from recognizing that.
Yeah. For sure. So what's on the plate for Jo Corso? What is something that you're currently working on, or something that you're excited about?
I want to play more festivals.
Yeah.
I think that, like, kind of taking this past year was just more like getting over personal anxieties, like stage anxiety and stuff like that. And after enough times of, like, going up there and just being like, no, I'm just gonna go all at it, and then wash, rinse, repeat, but, like, also just critique it and mold it a little bit till it's, like, at least I don't know, better. I just think it's, for me at this point, doing the live shows, man, that's where I get the most fun. I get the most enjoyment. Meeting people, but also playing alongside them.
I love that. And maybe have you ever thought, I guess, of putting together maybe a band under your with, like, your music, because you have a very, like, rich sound, and have you ever thought of trying to form a band around it in your music?
It's funny, because I used to play in bands. Like, I used to play, like, with groups all the time, like all different kinds of groups. Like, I played in, like, emo bands, I played in hardcore bands, and I played in a couple Christian bands, because I said yes to everything. I said yes, like, regardless of where, if the music was something that was what I listened to personally, it didn't matter. It was just like, yes, say yes to everything. But, like, in terms of having my own band, it's just, at this point, I was just having a conversation with my buddy Bretlin about this, and it was just, the finances that go into, like, supporting a band. If you are the front person, if you're the person arranging these shows, and being able to pay, you get to a certain point, these musicians, they're great musicians, they expect to be paid. They expect to, like, if I'm going to do this, I want some form of payment. Whereas, like, what I do is just, like, I kind of, like, I am my own drummer, I am my own bass player, I am my own guitar player. Like, eventually, I would love to have a band, but I would love it if it looked different, like, from a traditional sense. Like, I love weird percussion. I would get somebody up there just banging on, I don't know whatever it is. I wanted to sound. I was like David Byrne. Are you familiar with Talking Heads? Like, he did this solo tour where, like, all of his, like, percussion players were all playing separate parts of a drum kit. Like, that to me was, like, so cool. It was different, but it also it worked for the sound. It's gonna have to adjust. Like, we're just gonna have to see about that. I would love to have a band.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you're very, very interested in the creating an experience, and I think it certainly shows, because of just the style that you play in. It really captivates people. I've noticed that in the times that I've seen you play, everything gets pretty quiet because everyone is so intent on listening, which is very exciting. So which is kind of what I'm trying to think is, like, you want that to be the focus of the music for you, that gives you life, it sounds like, to really engage with people and create that and share that atmosphere.
I was just talking to my partner about this. It was just, like, about, like, for me, like, a sign of, like, a cool moment. I try to do this on purpose just for my own curiosity. It's like, whether or not I'm doing an instrumental or I'm doing something flashy on the guitar, I like messing around dynamics and then bringing it down and just seeing, like, are there any side conversations happening? Are there anything, what's going on out there? Like, do I have their attention? Am I doing something that's, like, great? I mean, because I play these songs, like, 1,000 times, and, like, like, sometimes I get sick of them. But, like, I know, like, I have to understand there are people who haven't seen what I do, and there are people who, like, enjoy what I do, and, like, regardless of my own opinion, and I could drive myself crazy with it. But like it was just like yeah, it's just my way of communicating. It's just a way. It's just like when you see me on stage, it's relief. It's more like I'm getting something out. Or if it's anger, if it's depression, if it's whatever, it's just like something's coming out in a way that people seem to like resonate with, which is really cool.
That's why. So let me into more of your creative process for creating these wonderful things that you make musically. I think it's just what you do is so different, and the approach is so different, you know. And so what is your creative process?
Oh, you gotta listen to everything. Like music wise, I think it was fun. You asked me earlier, like maybe why I moved down to Nashville. And I think one of the things I really wanted to engage with down here was just like, you know, I didn't grow up in the South, but like I love country music. I wanted to be exposed to all sorts of different kinds of music, and you know, thanks to Spotify and thanks to like all these like playlists. I mean, you can literally turn on something and like I was just like listening to these guitar players from Africa, and I'm just like, that's something going on that's different. I don't normally hear this. Like what they're doing is different from what so and so's doing, and so whether or not I'm like making an active effort to listen to new music, I'll go through my Spotify. I'll go through like what's on my repeat, right? And then I'll go through the songs, and I'll be like, if I'm in the mood to write a song, like I have to. It's not like I have to be in a certain mindset or I have to be in a certain headspace, but it's like it definitely adds like, oh, I'm feeling something. I feel like something could come out, and then I'll find a song. I have this recent song I'm working on. I was listening to an EDM song, and I'm like, okay, cool. Okay, that's got a drum beat to it, and then like it always starts with the percussion first. It always starts with like the bottom up, like bass line, drums, or something like that. Like, what's the bass line energy of what I'm trying to do? And then, I mean, from there, it just kind of goes on from like tinkering and just kind of like experimenting with like what works or what techniques am I like working on right now. I always think of them like my mannerisms. If I got a riff or if I got like a certain technique that's going on, like how can I turn that into a song? So like I have a song called Limerence, and this idea of like tapping the guitar with both my right hand and my left hand was something I was just like messing around with, and then it just was like, well, okay, and then the song kind of like became around that specific mannerism, that specific technique, and like sometimes you just kind of be like, I'm just going to see what happens and just let it go from there.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to listen. So we're going to have you play the guitar here in a second.
All right.
And before we do, I guess just list your social media and where people can find you.
My name is Jo Corso. That's JoCorso. Most of my social media handles is just Jo Corso with a underscore in between the space. So it's JO_CORSO. Yeah, find me on YouTube. Find me playing my music. It's a lot cool to watch it visually, but it's also cool just to hear it.
All right, let's get to it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jo Corso. This is a song I wrote called Pocket Saint.
I'll be coming home to you late.
adore you. First time I felt you in my legs, my bones broke the silence in our bed, and I fall into my favorite pieces. Oh, above me, don't you guarantee space for a memory, free parking spots. When I go missing, disappearing, you'll be wondering, I won't be far. I adore you. First time I felt you in my days, my bones broke the silence in my bed, and I fall into my favorite pieces. I fall into my favorite pieces. Whatever, you pretty thing. Yeah, I adore you. First time I felt you in my legs, my bones broke the silence in my bed, and I fall into my favorite